So we have another batch of Games Workshop previews today, new expansions for 40k, new Night Lord miniatures for 30k, and a bunch of other stuff for Sigmar, WARCRY and Underworlds. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics. So yes, another Saturday preview from Games Workshop, this one not being quite as 40k focused. There's still some interesting developments for the 41st millennium. In the video we'll take a look at everything that Games Workshop showed, and a few of my own thoughts around it. Let's start with a quick summary of everything that they discussed in the live stream, just in case you missed it. So in the preview today we had just a little bit of an expansion for most of their game systems. Warhammer 40k got the Hexmark Destroyer, which I've just made an entire video about, and also two new expansions in Beyond the Veil for Crusade and Tactical Deployment for Match Play. They've also released a new terrain set called the Vertigus Terrain Set, which is largely the same as the Command edition of the new starter sets. But other than that, it was a little bit light on 40k content. We haven't seen, say, the new Heavy Intercessors from Space Marines or that Storm Speeder yet. Both of those are still waiting in the wings. For the Horus Heresy, we have Book 9 Crusade, which pits the Night Lords against the Dark Angels, and there's some very nice new Night Lord Terminator models, which I'm sure could be used for 40k. For Necromunda, we have the House of Iron expansion for House Orlock, including some jump-packing wreckers and some half-robot doggies. For Age of Sigmar, we have a Shadow and Pain box set, pitting the Daughters of Cain versus Slaanesh Hedonites, including some new characters and some mortals riding steeds of Slaanesh, and the start of a new Realmgate Wars type series called Broken Realms, starring Marathi. WARCRY has got a Catacombs core box, which pits the Silence of the Flame versus the Cainite Shadowstalkers, two warbands that we had seen miniatures from already. And finally for Warhammer Underworlds, we have a Diachasm core box, again pitting elves against Slaanesh. We've got the Lumineth Realm Lords versus Hedonites of Slaanesh. They also teased a Seraphon warband showing a Chameleon Skink, and they also have an arena-style combat expansion pitting characters versus characters. So let's start out with these two new expansions for Warhammer 40k then. First of all, we have a Crusade expansion called Beyond the Veil, which to be honest is kind of surprising, seeing as Crusade hasn't been around for all that long yet, and we don't even have any codexes with the race-specific Crusade content that Games Workshop has already promised us. This one will be for fighting a Crusade campaign within the shadowy realms of the Pariah Nexus. It describes itself as a mission pack on the cover, and as well as missions it will have things like unique relics, battle scars, and upgrades for units that you'll only get through being able to fight in this war zone. Not entirely sure how that's exactly going to work, to be honest. To my understanding, I thought that the Pariah Nexus just sort of makes everyone but the Necrons a bit depressed while they're in it, so I'm not entirely sure how that's going to translate into more positive traits for people at all. Maybe they'll be able to find some sort of bits and loot of Necron technology. It basically seems to be a bit of a DLC sort of content pack for Crusade. Definitely not mandatory, but something that you could use to add a bit of a different twist on it. To be honest, as it's quite new at the moment, I'm not sure it's necessarily all that needed, but I suppose it could be a bit of a good pickup for Necron players. I kind of feel like it only represents one small corner of the galaxy, so it might not be as generalisable to other races. And even then, the Necron players themselves will be getting a ton of new Crusade content in their own codex when it comes out. And to be honest, I think I'd probably rather have that over this book personally. Who knows though, it'll be interesting to see the full contents of this. There could be some really awesome stuff. Next up we have a bit of an interesting, but honestly I think fairly weird expansion for Match Play Warhammer 40k. This one is called Tactical Deployment, and interestingly it is also under the subheading Chapter Approved as well. It seems that Chapter Approved might be going to be just a logo to put on books that update Match Play, rather than just literally just one book that comes out each year perhaps. Supposedly this is another mission pack for Warhammer 40k, with 18 new Match Play missions, which I'm going to guess are going to be minor tweaks on the existing ones, seeing as we've already got quite a lot of missions for 40k now. We've got a ton within the actual core book, and then a whole load more in the chapter-approved Grand Tournament pack. We're absolutely swimming in missions for match play already, so I'm a bit surprised to see another 18 dropped on us. If this does go into any sort of regular use, then I think we are just going to have to get used to reading up the mission in the book before the game, rather than just memorising the missions as you sort of could before. Now, unless there's anything else that they didn't talk about in the stream, it sounds like the primary purpose of this book is to help out event organisers who don't have enough terrain to run a tournament. It sounds like it creates some sort of rules framework for allowing people to bring some of their own terrain along to the event to help make a battlefield. And then I imagine there's going to be some sort of random mechanic for determining the placement of the terrain once everyone's got their things together. I can kind of see what they're going for with this. I know that it's one tricky aspect of organising tournaments to have tons of good terrain to put on the tables, and sort of like outsourcing it to all of the players who turn up could be one way of helping this. It does seem strange that you'll have to have an entire standalone book to do this, rather than having this as maybe a section of the Grand Tournament pack that came out with the chapter approved at 9th edition. I'm not sure many people are actually going to buy this book if that's the sole purpose of it, and unless there are some very stringent restrictions on what sort of terrain you can bring, then it sort of encourages people to bring the sort of terrain that most helps out their army. I'm sure a lot of people would be very sporting and just bring along the terrain that they felt looked coolest anyway, but it does kind of reward, say, a gunline player for bringing not very good line of sight blocking terrain, or maybe a close combat player for bringing some very big line of sight blocking terrain pieces to their field. Of course, we don't know how the actual rules are going to work for this, and maybe it will turn out to be really well thought through, but from what they've talked about so far, I'm really not sold on picking this up myself. Next up, of course, we have the Hexmark Destroyer, who I did cover in the previous video. He's the creepy looking Necron assassin guy with 6 eyes and 6 pistols, a former death mark that has fallen to the Destroyer cult with the similar design similarities to the Scorpec Destroyers. He's a character choice and an elite choice for Codex Necrons. He's ballistic skill 2+, each of his pistols is strength 6 and has at least 1 AP if not more, and if he kills a model with one of these pistols then he gets a special rule to shoot one of the pistols again, meaning he's likely going to be good for wiping out a small squad of infantry per turn. He'll basically be deep striking much like death marks, jumping in and murdering a bunch of stuff, and then hopefully doing enough to justify his existence in the Necron list. In any case, cool model, and glad to see them getting new options. Finally, for Warhammer 40k proper, we have this Vertigus Terrain Set. Basically seems very similar to the content of the terrain in the Command box set. You also get 2 gaming boards rather than the 1 I believe you get in Command, which I believe adds up to the right amount of board space that you need for combat patrol. And in addition to the Command terrain set, you get this little auto chorister thing, which sounds like it plays some sort of nice Imperial music. No idea if it'll have any slightly inspiring in-game rules. I could see you potentially giving the +1 morale to Imperium benefit from it. In any case, hope that this is a fairly decent terrain bundle. Could be a good way to get a lot of terrain and a gaming board on the go. Moving over to the Horus Heresy now. They've officially unveiled Book 9, which is Crusade, pitting the Dark Angels versus the Night Lords. And it's called Crusade because of the Thramas Crusade, which is a conflict that saw the Night Lords cut a bloody swathe through the eastern fringe of the Imperium, with the Dark Angels hotly after them, trying to engage and destroy them. Alongside this, they also have some Contikar Night Lord Terminators. Very creepy looking fellows indeed. They have some nice flayed skin adornments, and some absolutely brutal looking chain weapons that look very painful indeed to get hit by. I'm sure there could be some good material for making some Night Lords Terminators for Warhammer 40k as well. Here's a little bit more of a close-up of one of them. I think that's a Volkite weapon of some manner that this guy's got on the go. And of course, Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels will also be releasing alongside this. We saw his model in a previous preview quite a while back, and it is pretty stunning. Next we have a new expansion for Necromunda, which is called House of Iron, an expansion that's entirely focused around House Orlock. The book will contain some expanded background on the Orlocks, new fighters, hired guns and hangers-on, and more details for their house-specific weapons and war gear. They've also got a very nice new plastic kit coming out, as we can see. This one's called the Orlock Arms Masters and Wreckers kit. The Wreckers are the ones with the jump packs, and can be armed with pairs of pistols or pairs of combat blades. They were talking in the stream that they could be good conversion material for making some Elysian drop troops, which is interesting, seeing as they just dropped all points from them from chapter approved. I guess fingers crossed they'll at least go to Legends. Then they have 2 Arms Masters as well, this chap in the centre with that massive arc hammer, and the guy just to the top right hand side of him with the autogun. They also have 2 cybernetically augmented Canids. I think Games Workshop has slightly learnt from just how much positivity that random dog that came in the Lucidian Starstriders kit got, and are taking what opportunities that they can to add more pets into 40k. I'm not sure I'd like to get on the wrong side of these doggies though. Next up we come on to AOS, and there's a new big discount box set coming out. It's called Shadow and Pain, and it pits the Slaneshi Hedonites against the Daughters of Cain. There's some new characters and other miniatures within the box, including the Lord of Pain for the Slaneshis, and the Melusai Ironscale for the Daughters of Cain. There's full rules for all the new miniatures in the box, and apparently it's going to be kicking off a new Broken Realms campaign that's going to be similar in style to the Realmgate Wars, with a series of new books with new rules and narrative lore for them. Much like a lot of Games Workshop's campaign things, they say there's going to be new content for every single faction. It very much sounds like their next big release cycle, probably which will culminate in a new edition of Age of Sigmar. Here we have the miniatures for the Lord of Pain and that Melusai Ironscale, both pretty dramatic looking miniatures. I particularly like the sheer creepiness of the Lord of Pain. Sort of reminds me of a clown gone very horribly wrong, the sort of chap you might encounter if you turn the wrong way at the circus. Perhaps could be some decent conversion material for a Slaneshi Lord for Warhammer 40k. Here's a more full picture of the entire contents of the box, a pretty decent amount of miniatures all in all. It's interesting that there seem to be some mortal riders on steeds of Slaanesh as well, and 2 different versions of them as well. I'm afraid I'm not quite as familiar with Age of Sigmar stuff, but it looks like a solid pickup if you play one or both of the factions. Next we have WARCRY, which is going to have a new core box called Catacombs, in which you get the 2 new warbands, the Cainite Shadowstalkers and the Scions of the Flame, both of which have been previewed at least some models already. As a core box, it contains everything that you need to start the game, including really quite a cool double-sided gaming board with a lava dungeon on one side and an above-ground map on the other. There's a decent amount of terrain included, including plenty of archways and dungeon-type terrain, and will be acting as a bit of an expansion as well, as there's going to be new rules for fighting dungeon-style battles in the game of WARCRY. Here you can see the lava board on the bottom left, which I must say is looking very nicely indeed, with all the terrain painted up. And then there's the above ground section on the right. I believe that we've already seen all the Sounds of the Flame, but it's interesting to see a few more of the Cainite Shadowstalkers. I quite like the one with the dual repeater crossbows, very dark elf vibes. And here you can see the entire cast of the Cainite Shadowstalkers, again an entire batch of really nice looking miniatures. Finally, we just have a little bit for Warhammer Underworlds. They're launching an entire new season with a box set called Diachasm. They've done a teaser video, though not really showing off any of the models in too great detail. It's going to be pitting the Lumineth Realm Lords against the Slaaneshi Head Knights. Their warband is called the Dread Pageant, I believe. And for this new season, they're going to have 6 new warbands, including Seraphon, which they say on the stream are quite a highly requested faction. They showed off this cool looking chameleon skink, which is going to be part of that warband. And before this box set releases, there's going to be a character versus character expansion for Warhammer Underworld's Beastgrave. Basically an arena combat expansion, which sounds like it's going to be a multiplayer character combat where you can have up to 6 characters in game at once. So overall, not an absolute ton for Warhammer 40k, maybe some slightly more exciting news for Age of Sigmar and a bunch of their other specialist games. For me, my favourite was the new Necron Destroyer. I must say I'm not entirely convinced by those 2 new expansions, though I reserve judgment until people actually have them in their hands and the full details are revealed. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more videos like this. And if you'd like to help support the channel, I'd just like to mention that I have a Patreon page, which is what keeps these videos coming quite so regularly. If you've been enjoying a lot of the videos recently, then any support is massively appreciated, as it is what keeps them coming. Channel patrons get to see at least 1 video per week early, there's regular polls to see what sort of tactics videos come next on the channel, and you get automatically entered into the channel's prize draw, which happens once a month and we post out some very big kits. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.